fake it till you make it, I think, is an outdated process because I don't think it's great advice at all. Fake it till you make it. So you're overcomplicating, you're overstressing yourself, pretending that you're something that you're not. It aligns with imposter syndrome and supports that is that you're believing that you're not something. And I think coming back to your question, performative, we mentioned a little bit earlier, you can feel it. People who are performative are usually people who overshare information, really push things, where someone who is a natural leader will be cool, calm, and collected. And when they speak, they draw the room and they'll share insights versus someone who's being performative, who overshares and needs to be the loudest person in the room. A lot of the good leaders that I've worked with are introverted in a lot of ways. And you look at some of the great leaders over history, I think Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, Elon Musk, to name a few, Warren Buffett, the list goes on. Those people are naturally introverted, so they don't need to perform because they let the results and they let their voice and their communication take care of the room itself.
Welcome everybody back to the Sean Trey Show. I've got an awesome guest with me today. Would you like to tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do?
So my name is Chris March. I'm an executive coach. I'm also a speaker, also share some content. So I call myself a content creator as well. So I typically work with mid-career professionals, typically aged between 35 to 50, to help them elevate into more senior roles. Also work with organizations who are looking to scale their organizations as well, common leadership challenges, complexities within organizations. And since my return to Australia, which I'm sure we may dive into, I'm working with 7, 8, 9-figure founders here as well, helping them scale their organizations.
That's awesome. And before we started recording, we started to talk a little bit to each other about things that we liked. And I had said I'm from California, and we started talking basketball. So talk to me. You're a big basketball fan.
Huge basketball fan, Sean. So growing up, I wanted to be a professional basketball player. I picked up a basketball at age 8, and this was in the 80s in Australia. No one knew what basketball was. I was frowned upon why I was playing basketball. But as soon as I picked up basketball, I loved it. I was good, played at a high level. And I tried to get to the States, got a couple of Divisional 2 offers, but unfortunately that didn't work out. I played in the semi-pro leagues here in Australia, which is the NBL 1, which is the league under the NBL, the National Basketball League. Some of you may be familiar with the National Basketball League. It's now ranked one of the top in the world. A lot of NBA players are going there. LaMelo Ball, who some people may be familiar with before he went into the NBA, he played a season down in Australia as well versus going through the college system just to play, get paid professionally as well. So my love of basketball has been something that I love doing and didn't unfortunately make it. But Kobe Bryant has always been someone I idolized and loved, and always loved what he did on and off the court. And it's unfortunate that he was taking promise far too soon, because I think this second chapter of what he was going to do in his life off the court was going to be even more impactful. It was just an incredible human, incredible man, and what he did on and off the basketball court. So that's where my basketball passion come from. I still watch basketball now. Time zone isn't friendly, but I make sure I watch recaps and highlights whenever I can. And ball is life, Sean. Ball is life.
I love it, man. I grew up loving basketball as well. Not a great player. I love playing. Played recreationally. My brother's a great basketball player. He played for my university, and he's great at the game. But I love the game. I love the game. And I grew up in. I'm not gonna lie. I grew up in Boston, and I was born in Boston area, and became a hardcore Celtics fan. I was during the Larry Bird era, man. And so it was like 80s, Celtics. There was some great times. Not gonna lie, during the Kobe years, it was rough for Boston until we got Kevin Garnett, and KG changed the scene. Paul Pierce is cool, but he didn't have that Mamba mentality, and one of the things that, even though I am a hardcore Celtics fan, I'm going to say the truth is, one of my favorite players ever was Kobe Bryant because of the way that he played the game. And it was more about how he interacted as a team leader and how he worked with, I remember reading stories about the way Kobe showed up. And Kobe showed up, he was the first on the court. He would be there 2-3 hours before everyone else, taking shots, and he'd be the last to go home. He was the type of guy that if he had a bad game, after the game, he would sit there and get, 500 to 1,000 some odd shots up after the game. Everyone's cleaning the courts and Kobe's still standing there taking shots because he didn't want it to finish that way. He wanted the imprint of that game to be something that was still a net positive. You know what I mean? So that even if he missed shots, his memory of that gym was making shots, and the psychological aspect was huge. And like, I remember people that were on that Lakers team that couldn't cut it, and, he raised the bar. And if you wanted to be part of that team, and I remember people be like, well, yeah, I need the real leader of that. The real coach of that team is Kobe Bryant. And like, they would say it like it was an insult. And I was just like, yeah. And, you get these leaders that have this thing. And there was this great book that I read a while back, and I can't remember the name. I will look it up and share it with you. But I believe it was a book on leadership. And one of the things that it said is like, throughout, especially with the NBA, sometimes the star player is not that glue, is not that guy. It's not the person that is that person that holds it together. Yet there is always a glue, cohesive player that brings championship teams together. I remember for us and I played volleyball at the collegiate level, and I'm nothing great, but I was like the glorified cheerleader on that team, and that's okay. I did my best, and I did the role that I had. I brought heart to that team. But we had two guys on there one was our star player, and the dude had like a 47-inch vert. I mean, he could jump straight up about almost like 1.5 meters. It was insane. He had hops for days, but he was also moody. And he was also volatile. And one day he was on, and the next day he couldn't do a thing, And he was not the leader of our team. But then we had this guy, this journeyman guy, Dorian, one of my friends still, best friend in high school. And we played together in college as well. Dorian just was not what you would call a star. Latino guy with no hops, no ability to jump. No, he was a little bit thick around the waist, and he loved his food, and he was the setter on our team. But man, he was the heart, and he was the one who pulled it across the finish line, every day. And he would come up to someone, grab him by the shirt, look him in the face, and like, you're better than this. You can be better than this. And we played better because of his consistency, because of his intensity. So
yeah, I love that. I think, to your first point, there's so many Kobe stories that have come out since his passing.
Right.
And if anyone, to your point, if anyone wants to understand a little bit more about the mindset of Kobe Bryant, watch the Redeem Team on Netflix, which is about the 2008 Olympics men's basketball team from the US and how they stopped sending their best teams to the Olympics, even though they had the best talent in the world, and how they were reinvigorating the culture, and how Kobe reset that culture. And he set the standard in 2008 for that team to win the gold medal. So there's a lot of great stories that come out of that. Everything that you're speaking to, everyone thought they were just coming up, turning to summer camp for the Olympics, just going to have a good time, went out to clubs. And there's an example, I think Dwayne Wade or Chris Bosh was on the team, where they went out to a club and they came home and they saw Kobe Bryant was in the gym when they came home from the club, and they're like, wow, Kobe's here at 5 a.m. when we're just getting back from being out at the club. We need to switch up and bring it, because Kobe's going to bring it every single day. So that's the mindset that Kobe had, and he's just got so many other great stories that are out there around his work ethic and his Mamba mentality, which he'd strive for every single day.
there was for that Redeem team, I remember watching a clip from, I think from that documentary, or it was just on, it might have been one of the other players talking. But I remember seeing this interview online, and Kobe was talking, this guy was telling the story about Kobe talking about, I think it was actually Pau Gasol was telling the story about how Kobe was like, I'm going to go straight through him, you know, I'm going to run through him. And like, and these guys were like best friends. And yet Kobe was like, right now, he was going to set the tone because Spain was one of the strongest teams. And he wanted everyone to see that this was for real. There was no friendships. This was not, because, you know, you see it like for a long time, and it's gotten better. They're trying to make it, but like the All-Star game in the NBA,
Yeah,
you know, it's like, whatever. Like, come on, I'm going to get my 55 points. No one plays defense, and it's just people running up the score. And Kobe wanted everyone to know this was not that. This was not that. And he, the first play of the game, went straight through his best friend on the court, blasted him, knocked him down on the court. And like everyone was like, oh, it's that type of game. That's where we're at.
Yeah. And they ended up winning the gold to bring it all together. It was incredible documentary, and just goes into Kobe's mindset and how he brought everyone along for that journey as well. So if anyone hasn't seen it, definitely check it out. It's fantastic.
100%, man. I'm gonna go rewatch that with my daughter. I study now. My fitness endeavors have shifted over to Muay Thai. I love Muay Thai, and definitely not a UFC level fighter, pro, anything. I'm a guy who likes to go and train, and I have fun with it. But my daughter and her two cousins study as well, and they study in the kids class, and then I go and just work out with my pads and my coach on the other side of the gym. But one of the things I do is, I try to get them a little bit of that Mamba mentality. I get in there and they're just goofing off, having fun. And one of the things is that there were these other kids that were bringing the level of the class down. And it was interesting because there was this interesting study where they, from that, I think it's the book is called Culture Code that I was referencing earlier. And one of the things they talk about there is like, if you have different they did this study where they put these different types of distractor people into groups, the goof off, the angry person, the belligerent, and they had them doing their things. And one of the things that they found was most toxic to groups, successive groups, was the person who was like, I don't give a crap. I don't care. Whatever. It is what it is. And that person brings these group production way down.
Yeah.
And so, which is, Kobe is the antithesis of that. And so when we're training Muay Thai, I try to get a little bit of that Mamba mentality into my nephews and into my daughter. And I get over there and just like, you're not done till you're done, keep going. They're standing, one of the things that I teach, my daughter is like, between rounds, like I noticed some of the kids were just laying on the ground. And I said, you know what? This is Muay Thai. If you can stand, you stand, you don't sit there like, I'm so tired. You get up, you're running. If we finish this class right now, what would you guys want to do? Well, you play a game with our friends. Then you have energy. Then you've got energy to stand. You've got energy to keep going. You've got energy to have fun. And, it's interesting because they started responding and the whole class started performing at a higher level. And it was just one kid can make a change that changes the whole culture for the whole class. And there was an interesting thing that, shifting back to leadership, my daughter's school has this weird thing. And I love her education. I love the school system. We put her into a local school in Vietnam and everything's great, except for one thing. It's this weird thing they do. And I was commenting about it yesterday. They have, so she's in fourth grade right now, and next year she'll be in fifth. In first grade or second grade, maybe it's first or second, they picked the class leader. And they've kept the same kid for all these years. They don't change up the leader in the class, right? I see her face. I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, he's our class leader. He's like the teacher's assistant. He does he helps the teacher do marking and helps kids line up. And he's been our leader. And he's really scared the other day because we have this new thing in class. If you can get votes if you've done good things in class, like a voucher, and you can be the leader for the day. And he was
Yeah.
scared about losing his leadership. And I was just like, what type of weird system is this? And so I started talking to my daughter. She's like, I could be the leader of that class. And I was like, yeah, you could easily.
Yeah.
And she's like, and she said something, and she's like, I would be really mean and smack everyone into line. I was like, is that what a leader does? And she's like, well, you've never seen me be a leader. And I said, yes, I have. Remember when you're in Muay Thai class, when you started performing really good and you were hustling and doing a great job in class? She's like, yeah. And I said, and everyone started copying you? And she's like, yeah. I said, well, that's kind of being a leader. You were getting everyone going and you got people motivated. And she's like, really? That's being a leader? I thought it meant that you had to yell at people and make them get in line. I was like, no way. You worked really hard, and everyone started working hard because you were doing that. That's leading too. And she's like, wow. So, I want to ask you this question. When a leader says something like, I have no idea what I'm doing, what is a mindset shift that they can start using to embracing leadership? Because it doesn't have to be the way everyone thinks it has to be,
I think it's a great question. I think it shows humility. Firstly, as a leader, you don't have to have every single answer. And I think that's a trap as a new leader you fall into yourself. I know it's something that I did. You're expected to run around, know everything, and help everyone.
Right.
That's not leadership. That's not leadership. It's actually more powerful for you to go, Sean, you've asked me a question. I'm not exactly sure about that, but I'm going to go and get the answer for you. That's more powerful than trying to give a long-winded answer where you don't know. And people can read through that. They can see it's more performative versus actual reality. So people are smart, show humility and vulnerability, and that allows people to do the same in return when they don't know.
Yeah, 100%. Yesterday, I run a video production company, and it's, I have a lot of experience, but yesterday my team came to me with a question, and they're like, Mr. Sean, what do we do with this? And I looked at them and I was like, I have no idea, but I know that together we can find the answer, and I'm going to empower you to go look and see if you can find a solution, and I'll look for one too. And then we come back in 30 minutes and we see whose solution works the best. And they're like, you trust us to do that? I was like, of course. I trained you, we've been working together for all this time. Of course I trust you. And if you come back with a better solution than I have, we embrace that. And they're like, wow, oh, okay, that's great.
Yeah. No, I think you're exactly right. You can frame it back to the person that's asking the question. What would you suggest, or what ideas have we come up with so far? Let's crowdsource this together and come up with a path together.
Right. Yeah. No, you've worked with a lot of people around leadership. What's one leadership belief that you think people should just get rid of right now? Like something that everyone thinks a leader is, but it's not really.
I think it follows on from our previous that you need to know everything. The leader should know everything. And I think secondly, that to your point around your daughter as well, I want to build on that, is that leadership requires a title.
Right.
Leadership is accessible to everyone. You're a leader to your daughter. She's a leader in the influence and everything that she evokes. You're a leader to people that you interact with at the gym, the Muay Thai example that you said. You are shaping influence by what you're doing in interactions. That is leadership.
I love that. Because you simply that morning in the gym that you talked about, Kobe showing up at 5 a.m. No one appointed him leader. No one said, but his work ethic, when he showed up, people were like, damn, it's that type of party. Okay.
He made his impact right away, right? He was saying, this is the standard. And I think that's another big point as well, is you as a leader must create the standard. And Kobe, without doing anything, he created the high standard. You need to create a standard, or a standard will be set without you setting it.
Yeah. Yes. One of the things that I'm not perfect with it, but I really pride myself on, is the team I've built for my company and the culture that we have internally. Like hiring for me is really important. And I had been looking for someone to be an executive assistant for my wife's side of the business. And I just looked for ages and ages and ages. And suddenly I posted on Facebook, and this one kid that I had met that was really cool. And just the few moments that I met him, he showed up. And he was just dynamic and really good. He's like, I would love to talk to you about the job. I was like, sure, man. Let's talk. You know, I had been, because everyone I'd been looking at on LinkedIn was subpar, and it was not because they weren't. It was just I had gotten ghosted so many times. 10 minutes before a call, someone's like, I'm really busy right now. And I'm like, yeah, I appreciate that. I'm sure you are busy, and there's no judgment on that. Like, we all get busy, but if you can't make the space to show up, that's not it. But when I look at the culture of the people that we surround and we bring into our team, they all like have one thing. There's this personality of, showing up and accountability, and yet we have a ton of fun. We'll break into store. I'll walk over, tell people a silly story, and we all laugh. And then, but then I'm crushing it. We crush it. We all work really hard. But there's this culture that's come to it. And one of the things now that I'm really proud of, yesterday I passed off the scheduling to my team leader, Nalp. And one of the things that when I passed off the scheduling to her, it was because a couple weeks prior, I had booked people that didn't have the ethos, the work ethic that was part of what we had instilled in our team. And she was like, Mr. Sean, I really don't think these people are a good fit. Like, we have this pool of part-time editors that come in. And I said, well, what's going on? Why? And she says, because they don't hit the standard that I think we need to be hitting. And I was like, what standard is that? And she's like, it's the standard that you kind of trained into us. And I was like, right there, we had created a system, a culture of accountability. And I didn't sit there and say, this is what you had to do. I modeled it, and I showed up, and they then started internalizing that. And so it was just like, to me, I was just like, yesterday was one of those not proud father moments, but proud, like, team builder moments where that standard was then being passed on to the next generation.
Yeah. No, it's a perfect segue from what we were mentioning around setting a standard. And from that, your team has embodied that because you've modeled the way, and that's the value system that you created.
One of the reasons I did that, and it leads into my next question, was because early on when I was building my company, I was running myself into the ground. Like, it was exhausting. And, there are a lot of high performers that will burn themselves out if they don't create systems.
Yes.
Do you ever see people burning themselves out? And what's the trap that high performers never see coming?
I've gone through it myself. It's easy to do depending on the organization or the culture that you're in. You're just expected to deliver more and more and more and more. And there's a lot of responsibility on you, of course. You're being pulled in many different directions. So a lot is being asked from you. You look at every day, and every day you don't know where the time goes. And then by the end of each week, you're literally falling asleep by the time you've had some time to rest on a Friday, right? I think it's important for you to understand that we're not machines, firstly.
Yeah.
We are not machines. We are human beings. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned, and I continue to work with the clients and the organizations I do, is the 7 types of rest. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the 7.
No, I'd love to hear this.
I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but one of the biggest things that you can look at is that you need 7 types of rest in order for you to be at your best. So if you wanted to pull that up, that was
I'm gonna look. You tell me more, and I'm gonna pull the 7 types of rest.
Yeah. So there's first the biggest one, and I think we all can put our hands up with this one, is sensory rest, i.e. your devices. We spend on average, I think the average, if I remember, is around 4 hours a day. Most people are looking at their phones, making sure that you are giving yourself ample rest away from the phone. That is absolutely huge.
Right.
That's the first one everyone can focus on. So if you're in a corporate environment or you're spending a lot of time on a laptop, be wary of that and how much time you're spending, and make sure you're getting that rest. The other rest is social rest. So
Yeah.
are you an introvert or are you an extrovert? Regardless, you need some way to fill your cup. So it's important, the better you understand yourself, the better you know that you to be at your best, I need to spend this amount of time every day working on interactions with teams, so forth. And then I need time by myself to deliver
Yeah.
the work that I need to do every day. So with that, if you're an introverted person and you're spending a lot of time being an extrovert, you're going to tire yourself every single day. So look at your day and look for opportunities where you can get some rest if possible to have that to be at your best.
I love that. So I'm going to just read these, and these are powerful. I never thought about this. So physical rest, everyone, mental rest, and that's going to be get rid of the mental noise, emotional rest, social rest, sensory rest, creative rest. I never thought about that one, but then spiritual rest. I want to tap into the sensory rest too, because like this is one that I forget about. If you go to sleep and your phone's too close to you, yeah. I know right now, my clients and I interact a lot on Slack, and if I have Slack on, like I know the demands will come the second that's on, and so when I'm done with my workday, Slack is off, and because there will be demands that come through that, and then it's stuff that I have to handle because it's important and my clients need to get that resolved. But it's something that it's powerful to hear that you need to rest. I grew up in my parents were a very interesting type of Christian, and they were called Seventh-day Adventist. And I'm not practicing in that religious system anymore, but there were things in it that were really interesting. And the group had two things that were really special. One is they were all vegetarian, and it was like their thing. And it's interesting because the Seventh-day Adventists have been studied in the documentary Blue Zones. They're one of the Blue Zones. They all live in this place called Loma Linda, where they all live together, and they live to the extremely old age. And part of it's there's a multitudinal, multifaceted thing there. They have a great diet. People get a lot of exercise and a great healthcare system. So, and community kind of keeps everyone healthy. But the reason I bring this up is there's one other thing that was really interesting and special about that religious group is that they have a very, very, very strong belief in their Sabbath, their Saturday. Like everyone takes Saturday off. It was so annoying as a kid because, all the good stuff was on Saturday, man. And couldn't do all the cartoons that everyone did. We couldn't play sports with everyone else because they all took off Sunday. We were taking off Saturday. But that's neither here nor there. What was interesting is that my family had this very strict unplug rule, and this is before digital devices, but we were unplugged on Saturday. And it was one day where, we didn't do anything. Even I know right now, if I called my dad, he would answer my call, but he's not watching the news. He's not watching TV. He's not plugged into anything on Saturday. It's a time for nature, for friends, for community, for church, for rest. And it was, and my dad in that group, they follow it religiously. And one of the things that you see, and now growing up, I'm kind of instilling that in my own life. I need one day a week at least to just rest. Tomorrow, Sunday, is my I don't have podcast scheduled. Dude, I am taking that day off. It is a day to chill, because if you are not getting that sensory rest, especially in an overstimulated world, man, you'll go nuts.
It's so important. And I think for anyone who's listening, check out the 7 different types of rest. It's really a game changer to make sure that you are filling each of those different cups, because biologically it's important for you to deliver for yourself, for your job, for your family, for your loved ones, and it will help guide you.
I there was something I was reading that popped up, and I'll look at people's bios and stories, and then kind of pull some questions together. But there was one thing that I wanted to ask you, and like everyone talks about fake it till you make it, but there's different types of confidence. There's real confidence and there's performative confidence. What's the difference between those, and is one more important than the other? Is faking it till you make it okay, or do we need something better?
Fake it till you make it, I think, is an outdated process because I don't think it's great advice at all. Fake it till you make it. So you're overcomplicating, you're overstressing yourself, pretending that you're something that you're not. It aligns with imposter syndrome and supports that is that you're believing that you're not something. And I think coming back to your question, performative, we mentioned a little bit earlier, you can feel it. People who are performative are usually people who overshare information, really push things, whereas someone who is a natural leader will be cool, calm, and collected. And when they speak, they draw the room and they'll share insights versus someone who's being performative, who overshares and needs to be the loudest person in the room. A lot of the good leaders that I've worked with are introverted in a lot of ways. And you look at some of the great leaders over history, I think Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, Elon Musk, to name a few, Warren Buffett, the list goes on. Those people are naturally introverted, so they don't need to perform because they let the results and they let their voice and their communication take care of the room itself.
I love that. I remember there was, I'll never throw someone under the bus, but I had a guest come on recently, and in the beginning of the interview, it was so performative. It was just like, yay, I am that guy. And it was interesting because by the end of the interview, he was that guy. Like in the beginning, he was trying to be that guy. But at the end of the interview, his knowledge came through, and I thought that I asked questions that would highlight his strengths. And he shared with me like genuine answers that were powerful. But in the beginning, he wanted to be seen as that character. And it was interesting to watch. It was a very powerful episode for me to watch because from minute 0 to our 40-minute mark, I saw this transformation take place. And I mean, it was just because he was that guy on the inside, but he was in that performance mode,
Yeah. I think naturally we can tend to do that. I think if we're trying to prove ourselves, naturally we'll go into that path, trying to show people who we are versus naturally who we are innately as well. And I think it's really important to tie this to leadership is that if you as a leader turn up as yourself, that allows everyone else to turn up as themselves as well. Be vulnerable, be human, be authentic. That's really the key piece there.
I love that. We're going back to basketball. Basketball is not a game of just winning. There are a lot of losses. You take the L. I remember when I was, in sports in general, I remember when I was one of again, I played volleyball pretty competitively. And in high school, I was one of the top players, top players at my university. I wouldn't say I was the star player, but I was good, And I hustled, I got there because I hustled. I was not a natural athlete. I was not that guy with the crazy vert. I got there because I showed up every day. And I remember, my freshman year and sophomore year went out for the team at my university. And I remember walking up, and it was back to the old days, man. I'm sure you know this. I'm sure now it's all online, all digital. But in my day, it was a piece of paper outside the coach's office. And you'd walk up and you'd look down the list of names. And I remember the first 2 years that I was in university, I'm not there. And, and I'm not going to lie, my freshman year, I expected to be there. Like, I expected to be there. And sophomore year, and then I went back and I worked that year. I worked my butt off. Sophomore year, also thought that I would be there, because not because of I was that good, but because I worked that hard. And then finally, junior year, I was like, well, forget it, man. I don't care. Like, if I get on, I get on, but it's about the work for me at this point in time. And I just kept showing up and kept hustling and crushing it. And then finally, junior year, I got on. And that loss, that L, ended up being the thing that was transformative and helped me level up. Do you have any moments where you took a loss that ended up helping you level up? And what were the skills or traits that you pulled from that?
To your point, I think the biggest lessons that we learn is through our failures, because if we're always winning, things become too easy. So when I look back at all the different things that I've done, most of them have come through failures. I think about early on in my career, I was applying for my first senior role. It took me 3 or 4 times to land that first senior role. And I remember going into the first interview and very performative. I remember being performative, and I was much younger at this point as well. And I bombed the interview. And that was a huge lesson for me. And I had to swallow my pride and work on turning up better the next time. And then the second time, I didn't get the role again because there was someone stronger than me. And that was another hit on my ego. And then the third time, and I had to wait, it was probably a year or so in between before I finally got that role. And I think the key thing that I learned throughout that is that the only person who's going to support you at the end of the day is you. So you've got to have that resilience. You've got to be ready to put in the work, as you said with your example, and to look at feedback as something that provides a roadmap. It's not a roadblock, it's a roadmap. So being open to feedback and looking for those areas for me to improve really helped me set me up for success. I could have given up the first or the second time and just said, look, this isn't for me. But I was really hungry at that stage, and I took that to tap into the basketball. I wanted to get better. I wanted to keep getting better and work my way up in that corporate space. So I'm like, no, this is right for me. My time will come. You just got to keep putting in the work. So that's what I really took from that time. And it took me 12, 14 months later, but eventually I got that role and I delivered once I got into that role.
I love that. Well, I think too, one of the things too is like, and this is something that I have got a lot of podcasts, but there's something that with my personal finance podcast is really important, and my Growing Money with podcast. And when I talk to financial planners, they have this one thing that they're always talking about. And that's the most important thing that you can figure out is your why. Your why is the thing that is your anchor. So you want to get this type of money. Well, okay, why? Do you want to travel? Do you want to help people? Do you want to, feel empowered? Like it's if you do not have a rock solid why, then it's going to be really hard to stick to your goals, to stick to your plan. And so like for me, I kind of was laissez-faire, just let the money thing, it is what it is. Flow through life. But then when I had my daughter, suddenly I was like, wow, this money thing is really important. Like and I remember one day that my wife was traveling and I was short on cash and my daughter needed to go to the hospital. She had a thing, and Vietnamese hospitals are all cash. Like you got to pay up front. And luckily I had just enough to cover this expense, but I was sitting there going, what if there was another problem, and what if I didn't have access to the card that we needed to have access to, or this like that. And it's just like, wow. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that my why was strong enough to create a transformative experience in my space that started me down a different path. It started out, I wanted to learn about money, so I started talking to financial planners, interviewing a bunch of them. I can get some great information, and all these questions I have, it's transformative. How can people find their why to become a great leader, to just level up in life?
It's a great question. I think once you find your why, to your example, it's life altering, right? I think I look at it from my own lens to help guide the conversation. So I worked in the travel industry for 17 years. And for anyone who remembers the pandemic, 2020 to 2022,
Right.
in, incredible, incredible times to say the least. Tourism, hospitality was decimated. That industry was decimated. By that point in my career, I was a senior leader and I was part of the organization when we had to lay off 90% of our staff.
Wow.
As the pandemic continued to go longer than first quarter, second quarter, we were getting into 12 months and we were really locked down at that point in Canada. Revenue is almost at a minimum. So there were discussions around the organization that we would most likely not get through. And even though I was held on, one of the lucky two that was held on was in a full-time role, we were told to start thinking about plan B. So for me at that point, in isolation, living by myself in my apartment in Toronto, I had a lot of time for reflection. I went to the people that knew me well, friends, colleagues, family, and asked them, what do I do well? If you had to call me for one thing today, Sean, what would that be? And that all came back to helping others. I was always someone they could rely on. I was a mentor. I was great at giving advice in their eyes, and they just felt comfortable naturally. So that led me to move into coaching. So through that hardship of the pandemic, that was really my why of looking at what do I want to do next if I have this opportunity and I lose my 17-year career at that point. What's going to be something that aligns with my why and my values? And for me, that was the push that I needed to look at that and do that work. A pandemic's not going to come up again for you to be pushed into that, but have a think about those things. If you were to do your next career, how would you align with that? Where would you feel most rewarded in the work that you do every day that you feel like it's not work? That's how you understand what your why is.
I love that. If you could go back to a younger version of yourself and give yourself one piece of advice, what advice would you give yourself?
Don't worry about what other people think of you. The most important opinion is the one you have of yourself.
I love that. We started talking about Kobe, and I want to finish the conversation talking about Kobe. Kobe didn't care what you thought about him. Kobe didn't care if you liked him or you hated him, but you were going to respect him, and he made sure of that. And you were going to respect him because of how he showed up. If you were, and I see that people have that more and more. Yesterday, I was watching an interview, not an interview, it was like a red carpet thing. And Millie Bobby Brown, the girl who plays 11 in Stranger Things, now all grown up. And one of the people in the audience, one of the press photographers, paparazzi, was like, "Smile, Millie, smile." And she looked at them and she's like, "No, you smile." And she walked off the red carpet. And one of the things in that moment that I was just like, I was really impressed because I was like, man, that's the Mamba mentality right there.
Yeah.
It's just like this understanding, this deep understanding of who you are. And, allowing that to come out. And you don't need people to validate you. You can validate yourself. And if you have that clarity of who you are and what you want to be doing, it starts to come from inside out,
You'll never be worth more than you tell yourself.
Yeah.
So there's some conversations that you have are the most important conversations you have with yourself. You never earn more than you believe that you are worth. So having those right conversations and putting into practice of what you believe yourself is will then give you the confidence to be that person.
My wife is a celebrity in Vietnam, and she does that whole thing. And it's interesting though, because for a long time, I would go with her and support her at these events, and I still will and still do. But yesterday there was an event that was with a really lovely company, big ritzy brand, very private, small, tiny little event with lots of celebrities. And there wasn't a lot of space in the room. And she sent the message to them. She's like, hey, if you want me to stay for the event, I'd love to have a second chair so my husband can sit with me, because she's super introverted. She does not like to do the whole, she loves singing, she loves being on stage, but she doesn't like the whole, she's not a social butterfly. And so if I'm there, she at least can talk to me. She feels awkward. She doesn't want to do that whole game. And they said, yeah, we don't have any extra chairs. We can't make a space for him. And she's like, that's fine. Then I'll head home. And what I was looking at, and she's like, and then I was like feeling, I was like, wow, okay, that's cool. There's no space for me. And I sat there, I thought about it, and I said, all right, what could be reactions for that? First of all, who cares? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who cares? B was the one that I like better, though. And I said, use it as fuel. Jocko Willink has got this thing. Something bad happened? Good. You had a problem? Good. You had someone invalidate you? Good. Use it. And so for me, I was like, and I told my wife, and she's like, well, how does that make you feel? And I was like, well, of course there's some invalidation. We've been doing all this work together for years, and, and to not be seen is not fun. To not be wanted is not fun. And she says, well, what will you do about it? And I said, well, I'm going to keep showing up in my own arena and keep doing what I'm doing, so that at some point in time, people will want me to be there. And the people who don't invite me are going to be like, wow, that was a missed opportunity. For everyone that I invite onto my podcast, most of the people are awesome and love, like, dude, yeah, I'd love to come talk. But there's some people that are like, what's your viewership? What's this? You know what? You're not where we want you to be. And I'm like, fuel for the fire. I want to get my podcast to a point that when they sit there, and someday they might be looking through their LinkedIn and go, wow, Sean Trace messaged me? What did I say to him? Oh, damn. He invited me onto his podcast? Like, that podcast? And it's a mindset shift. And it's simply there because I know the value I have. And I know that right now, maybe my numbers don't match that. And that's okay, man. It's not a problem. Hopefully someday they will. And if they don't, no, that's on me. That's on me to keep creating and to know that actually at the end of the day, the numbers don't matter. It's about the conversations. It's about something more. But I have to get into my head this mindset of that Jocko Willink. Good. If someone has Kobe, Mamba mentality, it's Jocko Willink. Dude's got that mindset, So yeah, man. Are you showing up? Are you there? And do you know why?
Yeah. Turning up every day, focusing on getting better than you were yesterday. Keep it simple. Keep it moving forward.
Yeah. If you could give the listeners some information about where to find you, where can they go and look for information and some of what you offer?
2 ways. Firstly, LinkedIn. I share content on there, talking about leadership, future of work. Feel free to reach out to me there, Christopher March. DMs are always open. Feel free to drop me a line there or at my website, chrismarchcoaching.com.